Our gospel story for this morning is about this woman who was bent over and could not straighten up at all. Isn't that an interesting way to be identified? She has no other name. History has named her, history has judged her and labeled her by her appearance, by what's wrong with her, by her situation. But anyway, it's the Sabbath, the holy day, and the Jewish people have come to the synagogue, and Jesus is teaching there. And like every first century synagogue, the men are in front and the women are in the back. And somehow Jesus notices this woman bent over, or literally in the Greek, doubled over. And she probably has a cane in one hand and her head toward the ground. She's probably used to being unnoticed. She's probably likely accepts the fact that no one notices her or wants to interact with her. And she certainly believes that that's probably going to continue. But she's at the synagogue. But she's been living this way for 18 years, slumped, bent, hunched over. You know what happens when you spend 18 years looking at the ground, looking down? I mean, I don't know much about it, obviously, but you've got to miss a whole lot of what's going on around you if you spend 18 years looking at anything, and only that. If you were spending 18 years looking at the ground or just one thing the whole time of those 18 years, you probably would miss a lot of the life that's going on around you. But this woman who's been over, the scripture says, was crippled by a spirit. Now, what do you think that means? What it says to me is that there was a time in this woman's life before this happened to her that she could look up and look straight ahead, that she could look people in the eye. At some point, though, her life had been stronger and maybe even healthy at some point. But something had happened to her, and whatever it was, she couldn't leave it behind. It might have been an illness, but I don't really think that's what this is about. Crippled by a spirit indicates that there's something that has gotten a hold of her and has assumed power over her, or taken over her life. And that something is causing her to live a life in a crippled state, as less than a life. It's turned into something that she has to make all her choices around this state that she's in. And it's so powerful that it dictates her actions, it dictates how she speaks, where and when she goes, how she acts. It dictates how she thinks of herself and how others think of her as well, and how she thinks of others. It's amazing to me that she is at the temple on the Sabbath at all. I expect it would have been much easier for her to be just about any place else, at home, maybe lying down, but she's there. When a spirit has crippled you, I think she would tell us, it can take everything from you. Have you ever seen someone who walked around, stooped over with bad posture, slumped shoulders, and eyes that will not look you in the face? I see people like that. Some of them come by the church occasionally looking for help or this or that. Over the years, I've known a lot of teenagers who look like that. It was kind of one of those Tracyisms the kids used to say when I'd tell them to stand up straight and look forward, where they were. And it irritated them sometimes, but they did it. We told our children that a lot. Over the years, you've seen plenty of people like that at street side. Almost every Monday morning, I drive down to downtown Dallas in the Cedars district, if you know where that is, and it's kind of underneath and around and south of where I-35, I-45, and I-20 all come together there, and I think that's called the Canyon is what they call it on the news. And it's full of homeless people, and it's rare to see any of them walking upright. They're all stooped over, probably much like the woman in our scripture today. Over many years of watching high school football games, and most of those years being in the broadcast booth, I noticed something about teams that when they would leave the field at halftime, almost always the team that was losing at the half would walk to the locker room with their helmet in their hands and their heads down. But the team that was ahead at halftime usually had their helmets on and, would trot to the field house or the locker room. Joseph King and I spent a lot of years in that broadcast booth, and we noticed that. I don't know when we noticed it, but we noticed it a long time ago. And it was really fascinating because we would watch for it at every game after that. So what would cause a person to be like that, stooped over? Was it low self-esteem? That can cause a person maybe to walk bent over. Guilt can be such a heavy load to bear that it might cause a person's back to bow some. Abuse can make people hunched over. Human beings, as you know, can do unspeakable things to each other, physically and mentally. But it's not just relegated to humans, but you ever seen a puppy that was severely abused? People can look like that as well. Years ago, I served on the Child Welfare Board in the county where we lived. One of our duties on the board was to provide oversight to the group foster homes in the county. And the stories of those kids in those homes range from merely unfortunate to horrific. One young lady I'll never forget, turns out that as a child, and then as a teenager more so, she had been abused by her stepfather. He would molest her and hurt her and tell her that she was no good. And fortunately, CPS stepped in and removed her from the home. And she was safe with us for about 3 years, but when she aged out, she went right back to the home that she had left, and the abuse began again. And this gentleman, this whatever he was, had heard her and told her that she was no good and that she believed it. She had internalized it. It became who she was. She wasn't good enough. She wasn't worthy of genuine love. And I think that's kind of the state of the mind of this woman in our gospel lesson. Have you ever felt that you weren't good enough or that you weren't worthy of being loved or of this or of that? I think a lot of us have at some point in our life. I don't think it's that uncommon. Maybe some still do. J.B. Phillips' translation of the New Testament reads that the woman had been doubled over due to some psychological cause. I want to ask you, do you recognize this woman, this bent-over woman? She is everyone who has ever struggled to rise above the pain of oppression, of low self-worth, or the judgment of other people. She is everyone who's ever struggled with an illness or addiction or the loss of value or the loss of a spouse or a loved one or the loss of self-esteem or the loss of innocence. She is that person. She's anyone who's ever been told you can't or you never will and believed it. She is anyone who has lost hope. And as she makes her way to her seat on that Sabbath morning, Jesus calls to her. And he doesn't shout, "Hey, you, crippled lady in the back, come here." Jesus doesn't use any other label that she or anyone else has used to identify her. He calls her in such a way that she knew beyond a shadow of a doubt that he was talking to her. And it says, Jesus saw her, the scripture says, and he called her forward. Jesus saw her for who she was. He knew her. He knew her utmost secrets. He knew her humanity, her frailty. He knew what she had gone through, and he knew what she thought of herself. And he knew what others thought of her. And still, Christ loved her with a love that was crystal clear, unconditional, and beautiful. And when she comes to Jesus, she comes to a place of peace, of sanity, of love, of acceptance. And she hears Jesus say, "You are free from your infirmity." I have a feeling all she needed to hear was, "You are free." You're free from your oppression. You're free from judgment. You're free from shame. You no longer are under the power of this thing that has controlled your life for so long. You are free to be who you are and not who others tell you that you are. You're free to live in the grace and mercy of the one who loves and cares for you and knows everything about you. You're free to love yourself, to accept yourself. You're precious. You're cherished. You are adored. And then Jesus, the scripture says, put his hands on her. And immediately she straightened up and praised God. Now the leader of the synagogue He doesn't like this because Jesus has healed someone on the Sabbath, but Jesus shuts him down and calls him a hypocrite. And then he turns to the woman, though, and calls her daughter. Daughter. He looks at the crowd and their mouths, you can imagine, wide open, and then lovingly reminds them that this woman whom they have made to feel less than for all these years is as much a part of them as the leader of the synagogue. He reminds them that the family of God is not about shaming people into community or marginalizing those who struggle or are trying to make it. It's about bringing all people in to the center. I don't know if you're bent over today. I mean, we all look pretty upright and sturdy, you know. Several of you sat up straighter whenever I said that. I don't know if you're bent over. But I don't see the way Jesus sees. I don't know what may or may not have a hold on you, and you certainly don't know what may have a hold on me, or how far out into the margins we may feel. I don't know what you struggle with, what it is in your life that has claimed power over you, but I do know this. We all, to some extent, live bent over or bent double lives. And it may not be in the form of this debilitating disfigurement or something like that. In fact, no one may be able to see what you're bent over or that you're bent over at all. But Jesus knows it. And he has seen you in the back of the room with your cane, and that's all right, because Christ loves you. And at this very moment, he's calling you and me, all of us, to stand up straight. And when he calls to that you on the inside, he calls to the you that he created. He calls to the you that he died for, and to the you that he loves no matter what. And what he offers is life and freedom that is rich and full. We don't have to live bent over to anything or anyone or any label. Never. Because the one who knows the truth about us sees all of it and still calls us son or daughter. Thanks be to God.